from the glomerulus, and at the end, we lost it back to the capillaries, back to the circulation, right? So you have much, much, much less glucose here, and much less sodium, and much less everything. So how can we get the same osmolality? If the concentrations if all the solutes, we lost, not all of them, but we lost most of the solutes here compared to here, how can we get the same osmolality? Because we also lost what? Water, exactly at the same level, because water followed. So the content is different, but the osmolality is still 300 milliosmoles. Leaving the PCTs, the filtrate lost a lot of solutes as well as water molecules. All of these were reabsorbed. So while the composition changed dramatically, the osmolality of the filtrate exiting the PCTs, right here, going into the loops of Henle, is still 300 milliosmoles. And we'll do the journey together. So we're going to start with 300 milliosmoles, okay? It's going to be purple this time. So as you run down, you're the filtrate, you're inside, you're the purple part, right? The red arrow here. Outside, we just said we have a medullary gradient, right? So outside it's becoming saltier and saltier, more and more concentrated, right? So you're taking a peek outside, you look at the window and say, oh my God, outside is 300, but now it's 400 and 500 and 600. We don't like that, right? We like equilibrium. So as you go down, if you are 300 here, that's okay. Around you is 300, but as you go down, it's 400. Wow, you don't like that. So what can you do to fix that? You can either take some of the salts out from the outside inside, right? You'll dilute the interstitial fluid, you'll concentrate the filter, and meet somewhere in the middle, maybe 350 or so. Or you're going to lose some water, right? And you'll be more concentrated to filtrate, and you're going to dilute the interstitial fluid. But you need to change that. So it's one or the other one. Between those two, talk with each other for a tiny little bit. Sorry for pushing in time. And tell me which one is going to work here. 3, saying either 1 or 2. 1, 2, 3. 2, why 2? Because the descending loop is not permeable to solutes. So 1, theoretically, could have been a wonderful solution, but it practically cannot take place because function follows form. Because that's the anatomy of the descending loop of the loops of Henle. You just don't have the right transporters for solutes, but you do have aquaporins. So because of the non-uniform permeability, what we're going to see is solution number 2. So now we are releasing water into the interstitial fluid. Any questions about that before I continue? Yes, Nicole? Everything that you see here outside is in the interstitial fluid. That's the medullary gradient, okay? So now, you are, if you think about remember, you guys are the filtrate. You are the purple guys, right? You are losing what? Water, okay? But losing from the filtrate is not a problem because we want to bring back the water. The only thing that is missing is what's going to happen to the water. You are losing the water in order to solve a problem of imbalance between the filtrate and the interstitial fluid. In a way, you solve it, right, by releasing water. And actually, you're not going to solve the gradient because there is one part that is missing that is not here on this diagram. There's another set of something going around the loops of Henle, which is going to be what? It's not just tubules, it's going to be also what? Blood vessels, capillaries. Specifically, we call them the vasa recta. That's a very, very specific architecture. The vasa recta, I would just say, the filtrate goes from left and then goes up, right? The vasa recta, the blood, moves exactly the opposite way. One thing that I'm not going to do in this class and not responsible for is to understand why the counterflow is actually helping. if you guys are interested beyond that, or if you need to study this for the MCAT or for whatever, you can read about it in the textbook or just watch the wonderful animations about this on YouTube, if you will. Okay? But right now, we just think about the vasa recta. And the vasa recta will basically collect all the water that was just released back into the veins. So this is a very simplistic diagram. This is the area that shows you the gradient. The browner it gets, that means it's more and more concentrated. Here is the filtrate losing in the descending lip water. And this just simple capillary represents the entire vasa recta. It's going to collect it and bring it back to the circulation, to the veins. So you the filtrate, just release water to solve a problem, right, of imbalance between the filtrate. But that problem is going to stay. You didn't fix the gradient because all the water you just released was stolen, if you will, back to the circulation. Is that good for us? It's wonderful for us because this is how we just reabsorb more water. But the gradient stays. So the next set of stream of filtrate that will run here will also release water. And the more you go, the deeper you go into the medulla, you see more and more and more salty, highly concentrated interstitial fluid because it's still concentrated, so you're going to lose even more and more and more water. The deeper you go, the more water you lose. Yes? So that Isabel is asking a great question. Will the blood vessels lose the water? The answer is no. Why? Because it's a counterflow. Don't even try right now to think how that works, right? Again, if you're interested in that, we call it I'm not even going to talk about that, right? Just think about it as a given. The blood vessels, because they're going from the other side, the flow on the other side, it's called a countercurrent mechanism. Then they're not going to lose the water. If you're interested in why this happens, this is beyond this course. Okay, but they're not. The answer to this is not going to lose. All of this is going to go back to the veins. Ash. No, because the water is not mixed because the vasa recta is coming and stealing it from the solids. So it may be mixed for a little bit, but it doesn't matter. The concentrate, the gradient will still be here. Every molecule of water that you just released from the filtrate is going to go to the capillaries and back to the circulation. This gradient is going to stay here forever. Forever. Yes, Martin?
I just want to clarify, so the reason the gradient is not being maintained is because that water that pushes back is being taken away.
Perfect. Okay, if it's not clear, again, I'm repeating that. The reason the gradient is not being solved, it's maintained, is because the water that left the filtrate that should have solved the problem is not, because it's been taken away back to the circulation. As a body, we just reabsorbed a lot of water. That's good. Now let's think about the filtrate. The numbers now are inside the filtrate. We just lost water as we went down, right? We didn't lose any ions, sodium mainly, so it's becoming more and more concentrated, right? You can even see that in the color when it's becoming more yellowish, right? We good? With the filter becoming concentrated. Now before we go and see what's happening at the other side, let's try to think together about this. How are we doing with time? We're good, okay? I want you guys to think by yourselves. Don't look at the next slides. I know that you have the information there, but just for your own critical thinking. You guys are in the filtrate. You're running, you're swimming, oh, it's salty, oh my God, it's like seawater right here, right? You're going up. You're looking at the window outside. As you go up, what do you see? An interstitial fluid that is becoming more and more what? Diluted, right? Because it's the same interstitial fluid and it's the same gradient. So as you go up, you're going to see outside 1200, 900, 600, and so back to the 300, right? So think together for a little bit. What can you do to solve that imbalance? Because you still have imbalance, right? You have to think about two options, and I think then what's the practical? What's the only practical one? So first off, I want to hear, as we go up from the filtrate and we see a more and more diluted interstitial fluid, what are the two theoretical solutions for that. We can do what can we do with water? Bring water in, right? It's highly diluted outside. Let's bring water into our concentrated filtrate. Or, alternatively, let's throw the ions out. What are we going to choose? Ions out because we are not permeable to water. Function follows form. And it's not just because the permeability is different, it's also because we went down first and then now we're going up, right? If you just change the architecture, it will not work. You need to see an increasing concentration of osmolality, increasing osmolality as you go down, and then a decreasing osmolality as you go up. That's exactly what's going to happen. The concentrated filter, please focus just on this blue arrow at this point. Okay? The concentrated filtrate progresses up the ascending limb. Now it faces a decreased osmolality in the interstitial fluid. And as a result, NaCl, it's actually going to be Na and Cl will follow. Okay? We're going to leave the tubule. So we're going to solve that gradient, right? We're going to make it more salty or not. We're not. Why? What's going to happen to those NaCl molecules? Who's going to steal them? The vasa recta that is right there. And then back to the veins and back to the circulation. Congratulations, we just reabsorbed back water in the descending and NaCl in the ascending. Any questions so far? Give me thumbs up on how many of you are still with me or how many of you are completely confused at this point. Feel free to say that, I just want to get a sense. Okay, see a lot of this. Perfect. Yes, Sarah.
So if the entire purpose of this is to filter, wouldn't just releasing?
The goal is not to filter, just remember, now it's to reabsorb. Just want to make sure that I got your question right.
Well, I guess my main question is, in the filtration process and in this, things that are leaving are just going back into the blood?
The good things, the water that is leaving, we're bringing back. And the solute that we lost, because we had to lose a lot, right? Out of the filtration, we're now getting it back. So we are losing it from the filtrate. But the filtrate is going to be urine shortly. We care about what we can retain. We bring it back to the vasa recta. Okay? Losing is not losing to the restroom. Losing is losing from the filtrate and bringing it back, retaining it inside our body. Now, as we go up, okay, let's go back for a second. Okay. Now, I just want to remind you for a second the numbers here, okay? 300 at the top, right? That's what we started with. Now, we're going back here, and okay, we start 700, we released ions, we're getting 400, we still didn't release ions. At some point, we reach 300, and we should be fine, right? From now on, there's no more imbalance. But if you look at the filtrate, you see that it's becoming more and even more and even more diluted. It reaches 100, and sometimes it can even reach 50. How is that? Look at the red versus the blue arrow. What do you think happens here in the thick part of the ascending limb? From now on, we're not diffusing, releasing sodium because we think we solved, right, the gradient. We don't want to because we reached 300. We don't want to release more ions. Now we're going to actively transport and throw ions out. Why? Because we need more reabsorption. So the red arrows show you that in the thick part of the ascending limb, Na is actively transported out of the out of the filtrate and into the interstitial fluid. Sorry for that. Mistakes. And again, it will be collected by the vasa recta and back to the circulation. Yes. Because I want to reabsorb. So as you go up, once you reach 300, everybody's happy, right? You don't want to release more ions, but we need more ions. We didn't finish yet. So what do? We actively throw sodium out at this point. Any questions so far? Yes, Gordon.
So it's obvious why we would use a lot of but does this also work for potassium?
Yes, this will also work for potassium and such, but we typically will take care of that already back in the PCTs. Sodium is the main one we are trying to get back into. That's the main challenge, sodium and water. Before I continue, we're not done with our journey, right? I just want to do a one stop here. And as far as I'm concerned, those that are not interested can plug their ears. You're not responsible for this. Okay? So in a couple of sentences, just for those who are interested, I want to explain about the gradient, how we created the gradient. Again, you're not responsible for this. Okay? I started by saying, hey, you have a gradient. And that's a given. And because of the gradient, we just saw how we are able to lose from the filtrate ions in water and how we can reabsorb. But how did we actually create the gradient? The answer to this, it's all an internal part of the system. It's one of the beautiful things about this. How is that? When you were very, very young embryos and your kidney was basically developed, the first stream of filter, again, I'm saying it for the fourth time. You don't need to know this, right? This is just for your knowledge. The first filtrate came in, did not see a gradient. So we just ran through this, right? As it went up to the thick ascending loop, what happened here? We had an active transport of sodium outside. When you're throwing sodium out, you start to create a gradient here of the interstitial fluid. And then the next time, the next stream of filtrate comes in, it sees, oh, this is a salt here, so we start to release ions and water and everything that we just discussed. So the gradient was formed, was created by the system itself, just because we have this active transport. Okay? We're stopping the detour, we're back into our story. You're responsible for everything we say from now on. Okay? So we have a gradient, and this will be through. Okay, this is kind of like a summary of everything in a very simplified diagram. The filtrate runs here from 300 going down, releasing water to solve the gradient. Capillaries, vasa recta, collecting it, goes up. Now it's again releasing, first of all, passively and then actively, sodium. Chloride follows through. Capillaries, of course, here, we don't see them, but they're going to collect at back. And we come up. And now we just reabsorb most, not all as we will see, but most of the water and the sodium. Dana, final question about this, and I want to continue. Oh, thank you. The active transport in this case is actually not a sodium-potassium pump. It's a pump, but not sodium-potassium. It's a different pump. I would have loved to give it the credit, but it's not. This is the time when it rests just a tiny bit. Okay? So the big picture is that here at the end of the PCTs, we'll reabsorb 65% of the water and 65% of the NaCl that we filtered to begin with. At the bottom of the descending loop of Henle, we added reabsorption of additional 15%, 65 and 15 together, we have 80, right? At the top here, we reabsorb passively and then actively 25%, so we get 90%. With this, we are almost done. In a regular resting state, this is enough. We're good with the water. We filtered a lot, but we reabsorbed 80% of the water that we just filtered. But it's not the end of the journey. We have DCTs and we have a collecting duct. So for the last part of the journey, and I know today is a lot of material, okay? So again, take the time to process that. For the last part of the journey, let's talk about a question of when and how do we want to reabsorb even more water and even more sodium? Okay, again, 80% might be just fine. We still call it a relatively diluted urine because it still has quite a bit of water, not as we used to have, but still quite a bit of water. Okay? So first of all, the question is, when? I want an answer from you. When would we want to remove even more? When would we want to have more? We want to excrete some water. Formation of dilute urine. Okay, so we want now to remove more water. I want it to be more diluted. I want your pee to be not so yellow. By the way, the reason why your pee can be yellow and yellowish or almost translucent is basically because of that bilirubin that we mentioned, a bile pigment. The more water you have, the lower the concentration of bilirubin, and it's not as yellow. The less water you have, you can see more the bilirubin and it's yellow. But that's not for this class. So when would we want to get rid of more water, for example? example that we discussed in class more than once. Maria. High blood pressure, right? That's the long-term solution. I want to remove some water, and then the blood pressure will go lower, right? So how do we do that? The water, the filtrate, is going to now run into these CTs, and then it's going to go down the collecting duct, right? Now, it can be 100. Try not to read this a little bit, okay? Just follow my explanation, and then we'll talk and read. So we have about 100. It can even reach 50 milliosmoles, and now it's going to go down, okay? Now you're going down. You're still in the filtrate. You're 100 milliosmoles. You go down, and outside you see 600, 900, 1200. Do you want to get rid of water? Again, you are 100. You're going down. Outside it's highly concentrated. You're experiencing exactly what the filtrate experienced in the descending loop, right? You're going down the gradient. Do you want to release water?
Yeah.
Again, you're 100 milliosmoles, you're going down, it's solute, 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 it's saltier, saltier. You want to release water, just like you did in the descending loop, right? But you cannot. Why cannot you? Because that wall right now is not permeable to water. So you want to, but you cannot. It's the same thing you experience in the descending loop. Only in the descending loop you had aquaporin. And here, right now, you don't have aquaporins. So what's going to happen? All the water will go out. Simply as that. So you have 80% of the water you bring back, and 20% you get rid of because you want diluted urine, because, for example, you want to lower your blood pressure. So let's say that I do want to keep more water. I want to concentrate my urine even more. It's still going to run down, and it's still going to be the same gradient. So what can I do now to release that water? The water wants to leave, right? What would you do? If you could have just added something to the walls, to the cells that make up the walls of the collecting duct, what would you add? Sorry, again? Is the question clear? Okay. I think now I really lost you. So we're going to go backwards a little bit. I just want to make sure we cover this. We got this, not cover this. We finished here the story and have 100 milliosmoles of the filtrate. In some cases, we don't need to reabsorb more water. We are very happy with what we have. So we just release it. Now, when the water goes down, the filtrate goes down, it's again seeing an interstitial fluid that is becoming more and more concentrated. So just like we had in the descending loop, we still want to release water to solve the gradient. But we cannot, because we don't have what? Aquaporins on the cells that make up the wall of the collecting duct. So we just let it go. Great. But now let's talk about another case. This case, you do want to keep the water. You don't have a problem of high blood pressure. Maybe you even have low blood pressure or just too much solutes, right? So now you want to keep more water. You want to lose more water from the filtrate, in other words. What can you do to lose more water from the filtrate? What will you add to those cells? You'll just put some aquaporins over there, right? And that's exactly what's going to happen. So what happens when we need to reabsorb more water? For example, low blood volume, increase osmolarity of the extracellular fluids. Okay? First of all, how do we know about this case that we have just too many solutes? Remember how we call those receptors? Osmoreceptors, where are they located? Where is that part of the body that is going to tell me about osmolality in general? Hypo something? Hypothalamus, right? This is where we have the thirst center. So when we don't have enough water, the hypothalamus is going to tell us two things. First of all, drink more. Yeah, drink some water, right? Second of all, it says don't get rid of all the water in the restroom, keep some, retain more. So osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus are going to tell us first to drink. We also have another interesting reflex that has nothing to do with the hypothalamus, and that is the saliva. If our osmolality is too high, in other words, we don't have enough water, the saliva, which is mainly made out of water, we don't have enough saliva. And we feel thirsty because we feel what? A dry mouth, right? Just because we don't have saliva, and that's a reflex. It tells us, okay, we need to drink more water. So we drink more water. That's great. But maybe it's not enough. Maybe we want to retain more. So, what do? Back in the days, I promised you, just told you like this, and I said, I promise you, we're going to go back to that ADH thing, and I'll tell you exactly what it does. So now, I'm fulfilling my promise. You can all rest assured. How is ADH going to work? What is it going to do? It's going to put aquaporins in the right place. So, what do we have? The hypothalamus will secrete ADH through, remember, posterior pituitary? We all remember this? Yeah, we learned something this semester, a long time ago. It's going to go to the blood vessels, peritubular capillaries, and then eventually it's going to go to the collecting duct. In the collecting duct, you could thought that it's going to say make more aquaporins, but actually the aquaporins were already made. They were just not in the right place. They're in the cytoplasm. They're not in the walls, in the membranes. So this is what happens. This is a case when we have a diluted urine, when we want to get rid of the water. So, and the dots here just show you the bilirubin, like how yellow, in this case it's not very yellow. In this case, the filtrate goes down, nothing leaves, although the water wants to leave, again, because we don't have aquaporins. In the presence of ADH, that will be there because we want to retain more water, then we will put inside those cells, the cells that make up the walls of the collecting ducts, the aquaporins are already there, but they're not located in the right place. The ADH will start a cascade of events that will tell the cells, put aquaporins in the membrane. And when we have aquaporins, ADH, H2O, water will leave because it wants to solve the gradient, will be collected by blood vessels. This is not a vasa recta, it's a different set of capillaries, but never mind. And then we'll have just a little bit of small volume of water. Any questions about ADH? Any questions? Yes, Dan? Aquaporins will always be, there will always be, I'm blanking on the word, but a turnover. There will always be a turnover. It's not aquaporins that are there are not going to stay there. Okay? They're going to be removed, and again, we need to do it again if we need to. The last part that we still did not touch, and that's the final part for today and for the urinary system, is sodium. Sometimes we need more sodium. We learned how much sodium is important, right? Back in the endocrine system, how do we call the hormone? How do we call the hormone, guys? Aldosterone, remember? Where is that produced, secreted? The adrenal cortex, wonderful, right? So how does it go? The same idea, but this time it's not about the DCTs. This time we're going to actively lose sodium from the DCTs and to some extent from the collecting duct by active transport of sodium. So to promote reabsorption of sodium, aldosterone, released from the adrenal cortex right here, it's going to go directly to the kidney, guys? No, it's a hormone, it goes everywhere, right? It's going to promote synthesis of sodium transporters in the DCTs and in the collecting ducts and go for sodium out. I think I've blasted you with enough of material today. We might just talk about a slide about this. We're entering our final set of 2 lectures on the reproductive system. A word of caution, okay? If someone is here sensitive, this is reproduction, and this is the human physiology system, right? If you are sensitive to whatsoever, to any sort of sexual organs discussion or anything, we're going to talk about erections, orgasms,